Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. Fred White, Tales from the Pen. If you're new to the channel, go down and hit that subscribe button. Click the bell notification and then click the word all. This way, anytime I put up a video, you will know about it. Today we got some special guests here on the panel, people. One you already know, one you're going to get very familiar with. Man, introduce yourself, man. Introduce yourself to the Tales family, brother.
Yeah. Hey everyone, my name is Donald Washington. I was in prison for nearly 15 years. I've been out now for about 28 months. Currently, I work with the Marshall Project. One of the things I do there is direct a film project called Inside Story that we're going to be talking about today.
And once again, my name is Bartley. Some of you know me as Ja. People up top particularly call me Ja. I'm the director of News Inside for the Marshall Project, which is our print publication that's distributed in hundreds of prisons and jails across the country. And I'm also the executive producer and host of Inside Story, our video project, which we'll be talking about today.
Yes, we will. That's we will. And you guys are well familiar with Ja. You know, he's got almost 10,000 views on the channel. You guys loved him. He was actually my highest rated guest so far. So salute to you. And I'm glad to have you back on the panel. And Mr. Washington, I'm definitely glad to see you here too as well, man. 15 years, that's a long time, man. You know, that's a long time. So let me ask you a question. So how's been the adjustment for you, man, for these last 28 months?
I would say it's been a struggle in so many ways that I didn't anticipate. I feel like I was the type of person who prepared to come out for different things. Like I was prepared to come out and get a job and go to an interview and like begin to integrate myself into the technology, though I didn't have access to it. But there were just certain circumstances that I faced that I didn't anticipate. Like how would I really feel interacting and meeting new people? Like going into the workspace and your coworker invites you to lunch. Like how does that interaction happen? Like so those sort of things I didn't really anticipate, so I wasn't really prepared for. So what I found is that when I got out and I would interact with people who I didn't know, who didn't know my story and my past, I found it like challenging to navigate that, right? And thinking about how much of myself do I really want to give? How much of my story do I really want to give? Not that I was ashamed of what I did, not that I'm proud of it, but it was just more so about just letting people in, right? So when you in, you fortify yourself because that's how you survive. And I didn't anticipate meeting new people and them being so like inquisitive so early. You know, it's like I want to say, why are you asking these questions? But it's
Right.
commonplace. But for me, it wasn't like I didn't study those gymnastics coming out. I was ready to go into an interview and start talking that talk and walking that walk. But somebody's asking me like, yeah, so what did you do before this? It's like, how do I navigate that? You know, in a way that I still felt comfortable. So like the first place, like when I first got a job and I was working, I like no one knew my past, no one knew my history, and it was kind of uncomfortable. Since converting over to working with the Marshall Project, something I've been doing now for a little over 2 years, completely different type of environment. People knew my history. People were receptive to my history, and that just made it that much easier for me to speak about it. Not that I was completely comfortable with people being inquisitive, but I felt at least a little less of a burden in that aspect of my life.
You felt free. Well,
Totally.
you didn't
So
really have to hide anything,
yeah, I
right?
didn't really have to hide it. And it wasn't so much to hide, and it's just like, how much do you want to give, how early, so.
Right.
Because there's
No,
always a follow-up question. Like you say, well, I've been in prison. And the next question is, why? Just like, did you do it? What was it like? Is it really like on TV? You get those
right.
questions, and
Yeah,
sometimes you don't feel like dealing with that. And then when you do tell people what you were incarcerated for, now you have to worry about how they're going to view your interactions down. Like when you're assertive, do they view that as aggression? Do they feel more threatened now? So are they intimidated? Those are dynamics that I didn't really want to have to worry about and that I didn't anticipate necessarily.
right. No, definitely. I definitely relate and I definitely understand. And, I tell people all the time, even in my last video, I spoke about it. I lied on every resume. I lied on every
Yeah.
resume. I never clicked the felony part because although they're not
Yeah.
supposed to hold that against you, we already know, and again, a lot of people, like you said, like when you were saying that, people always ask you, is it really like this? Is it really like that? Because people watch Oz all the time and think
Yeah.
everybody everybody was like that, and I'm like, that is furthest from the reality of
I
the
never met
situation.
Ada BC or any of
Nah,
those characters.
nah.
Yeah.
You're not cutting
I
the
met some
warden and
characters, but
staying in
not
the
those.
jail. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just very silly. It's very dumb, you know. So, Mr. Bartley, let me ask you. So the last time we spoke, okay, you had about 500 prisons, right? What was it, 32 states, right? With the magazine, right? And
Something like that.
something like that, a little something. I know you were only supposed to do 20. You promised them 20, and you overexcelled at that. So what has been the transition? How's the magazine coming along? And what's the next step you did after that?
Oh, well, the magazine coming along great. You know, it's still going into prisons across the country. Now we're in, I forgot the number we had before, but we're close to like 550. We're around there now, and we're in 39 states at this point. Of course, COVID changed a lot of things inside of prisons because they have to social distance. So some libraries are closed, but we had to find other ways around. So we bumped up our individual subscriptions. So people will write us, men and women will write us, like put us on the list, and we'll put them on the list, and we get it in that way. So it's working out. But since then we had some these two students from Columbia, like they did a study on News Inside. Will and Madison, I want to give them a shout out from Columbia University.
Okay.
And they found this stat that said that 3 out of 5 incarcerated people can't read. So that poses a problem for me. I'm in the journalism business, and News Inside is a print publication that people have to read.
Right.
So in order to overcome that obstacle, we decided to put together a video series, because I remember folks on the inside who couldn't read. They would have like me or one of the other homeboys read their letters from their girls or their moms, their pops, or read a newspaper to them. And sometimes they don't feel like asking. You got to read something to them
Or
again.
you write their
like,
letters
man.
for them.
Or you write into your letters. Sometimes people feel like, oh, I don't want to burden you or whatever. But I noticed that those individuals, they didn't have to read television, so they could get the information that way. So we put together this inside story in our first episode. It's called the Making of Superpredators, and it was edited and directed by my good buddy Donald, who was up north with me, and like I mentioned, hosted and executive produced by me.
Nice. Congratulations, guys. I'm gonna tell you, I seen the video. It's on the Marshall Project site. You can go on YouTube, people, and just see it. I'm gonna put the links in the description so everyone can see it and everything. Now, I know you said, Mr. Washington, you edited it and did all the camera. How did you come into that? When did you learn that in prison, or did you come home and just was a quick learner? How did that happen, man?
Well, I learned it being out, but I would say that being visual, I've always been a visual person, but I think being incarcerated, we become more visual, especially when we've been in facilities for a long time. It's like you get a picture and you notice every little nuance of it, right? So I think being in prison, there's a lot of cognitive changes that happen, and I think that becoming more visually detailed is just one of them. So I would say that it has lent itself to me learning, like, and really being into the visual aesthetics of things. It's something I picked up on my own. Like while I was on the inside, I came in with an 8th grade education. I walked out with a master's degree. And a lot of that was being autodidactic and studying myself, right? So I was able to get in a college program, but in order to get in the program, I had to have already had college credits. So to do that, I had to study on my own, find my own time to do it. So it's just like, I was able to develop that knack and those tendencies of learning and teaching myself. So that lent itself to me learning video editing and video directing. I'm also a freelance music video director and editor. So it really lent itself to this cause.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna put all them links in the description, man. People, need to shoot some videos or something like that. Hit my guy up. He's official. You got to see this. You got to see this thing, people. The Super Predator story is amazing. And what really, really struck me about it, guys, right? You know, it was the Catherine Jones segment. You know, shout out to Catherine Jones down there. Was she still down there in Florida? I don't know, but I know the case happened in Florida, man. You know, for those who don't know, she was like 13 and she was charged. I think she did like 20 years, right? Maybe one of you guys speak about it a little bit, Mr. Bartley.
Yeah, she did almost 20 years, 16 and some change. And it happened when she was 13 years old. And she was treated as an adult. She was called a super predator. And her and her brother went through some stuff. I don't want to give away too much of the story, but her and brother went through a real gruesome childhood. And as a result of it, you know, she committed a crime. Not that she takes that she thinks that she shouldn't be held responsible for the crime, but she has remorse. She knows what she's done, and she's very sorry for that. But at the same time, if you look at her story and you look at inside story in general, this episode, you will see that, you know, some accountability probably should be had by the media, who perpetuated this false theory, by John DeHulio, who created this false theory that in the coming years, these young children, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, who we now know brains aren't fully developed yet, will be these soulless, godless monsters with the rape, pillage, and murder without any remorse. And that was totally false, because the statistics at that time and the years following disproved that theory, but yet the media still ran with it, and it resulted in some harsh sentences for young juveniles. And you know, and I was part of the generation that gave birth to that. I went to prison at 17, and they kind of used what was going on with me and people in my neighborhood to come up with that term. And we laid it out, and it's our story. I hope y'all take a look at it.
No, it's an amazing story, and that's where the term super predator came about. You know, the guy, I think he wrote that in 1995. You know, and you know, and once the media grasps something, you guys know that. Once the media grasps something, even if it's not true, right? Like the Central Park kids, they were wilding, they were doing all this stuff, right? And then, like, you know, you guys said the term wilding came out from that, and then the super predators, and you know, once the media gets a hold of something like that, they run off with it, right? But the thing that you know, I went to jail the same, you know, pretty much the same age you did, and I know we can all attest to this, right? I don't think like I thought even 5 years ago, right? I don't think like I thought 10 years ago, right? So sometimes as kids, especially as teenagers, the emotions is different. Everything is on, you know, 100, right? Your emotions, your everything. And, you know, you're not the same person, and you're not the same as you were, as you would be as an adult, as somebody who's, you know, whose brain is different, who thinks different. And, you know, like us, we have families now, so the whole world is just different to us, right? So, you know, when that term super predator came out, again, you know, I was a product of that too. You know, like the media was putting stuff in the newspaper that never happened. You know, the leader of the Johnson gang, I was like, who the hell is the Johnson gang? I've never heard of the Johnson gang. I don't know no Johnson gang. They were freestyling, bro. You know, literally on the front page of the Daily News, the leader of the Johnson gang was convicted. And I was like, I'm looking at him like, that's who? Wait. Oh, they talking about me. I'm like, wait a minute. But, you know, because the media just grasp stuff, and they don't, you know, they have no clue what, you know, what the real scenario is and what's really happening, right? And in her case, and I want to talk a little bit about, you know, that super predator term, even though it was coined in, you know, the 95, I mean, that term has been around for a while. I remember, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Willie Bosket, right? Willie Bosket. I mean, you know, at 15, a lot of these laws changed, and they call it the Willie Bosket law, because back in the days, it was Hugh Carey. He was the governor at the time. As a matter of fact, I think the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel is named after him, this Hugh Carey. And Hugh Carey actually called an emergency legislation, right? Because Willie Bosket, because at that time he had caught 2 homicides and had an attempt and a robbery, and he can only get, you know, certain sentence, which was 5 years, right? And he was, and that at 15, you know, he ended up going to prison, and he's pretty much been in there. You know, now he's pretty much been in. He got 82 to life or something like that. He's in like 5 points now with like 75 years in solitary confinement, right? I remember they even built, I don't know if you guys remember this, they even built a special Silence of the Lambs Hannibal Lecter cage in Woodburn, man, where it was plexiglass around his cell, no human contact, right? And he was just so young. But the reality is, a lot of people didn't know that, you know, he suffered his you know, his grandfather was raping and molesting him. You know, his daddy went to prison for 2 homicides. He came home, and actually Willie Boscott's like a genius, man. He's like a very smart guy. His dad, you know, came home. He got a job with like NASA, something like that, and then his dad ended up killing his girlfriend and then committing suicide. But Willie Boscott always wanted to be like his dad. So my point to the whole thing is, sometimes the violence, you know, it's I'm not going to say it's inherited, but when it's around you and when you see it, and, you know, when you're being molested and raped and have no father figure and all this stuff, you know, how could he not be, you know, what they label, you know what I mean? Like, they labeled him a monster, and it's like people don't really understand that it was so much more behind it, which is the same thing that's going on. My point is, in today's society, sometimes I see a lot of these kids, man, and I see they're 15, 16, and they run in these streets, and people will look down upon them, and people will, you know, have all these ideas about them, the super predator mentality. You know, these guys are super predators, these guys, and not really understanding that they don't know what's going on in the home. They don't know what's happening, and, you know, daddy's not around. You know, I think a lot of it has to do with that too. This is just, you know, my opinions. You know what I mean? A lot of dads are gone, right? You know, a lot of statistics. Now, I'm not saying all the time. I'm saying the statistics to tell you that the family that sticks together, the odds are that the kid will probably end up maybe a little bit better. You understand? Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that definitely makes
Absolutely.
sense. But if you look at the way it's been playing out for so long, it primarily affects Black children. If you look at Marcel Dockery, I remember this case. This name always is in my head since I saw it, since I was on the inside.
Okay.
He's a 15-year-old kid who set a mattress on fire in Brooklyn. You know, he was set, you know, kids play with matches. So the building caught on fire. 2 police officers came in to respond to the scene. In an elevator, both of them suffered smoke inhalation and injuries to smoke inhalation, and one of them died. And because of that, they gave this little kid 19 years to life. They sentenced him 19 years to life. And it was clearly he was just playing with matches. Not to say that, you know, he shouldn't suffer any repercussions for what he did, but to throw his life away just like that. But then I was just watching on 60 Minutes, I believe it aired yesterday. It's the top cop in St. Louis, Kim Gardner. She came in there, she wanted to clean up St. Louis. St. Louis got the most police shootings on civilians in the country. And
I didn't know that. Really?
they do. And they got this one guy, they showed this image, just came on 60 Minutes yesterday, this one guy, cop, who is trying to pull over this young Black kid. And the Black kid starts skirting off in the car. The cop starts chasing him, and the body cam and the footage and the mic picking up cops. When I catch him, I'm gonna kill him. And they hit the dude car, dude crash, come out, he fires on him, kills him. And then in the car, the camera turns on, in the car, they find a gun with only DNA on the gun is the cop's DNA on the gun. But yet, and then, you know, the guy, you know, he gets off. He don't get charged or whatever. So you got clear evidence. He said he's gonna kill him, chase him down, he kills him, but then he gets off. But then you got this young 19-year-old kid in New York who set a mattress on fire, and he gets 19 years. He didn't intend to kill anybody. It was a mistake. And that's just what happens, man. And that's all ties into this super predator piece. When they see young Black kids, they see them as adults. They don't see them as children, and they dehumanize them by using these animal terms to describe them. So the justice system could do away with them without people caring.
Yeah, and it's a form of scapegoating, right? So when we know that there's structural flaws in place, which there are, you know, and these flaws lend themselves to people who are already disadvantaged, being further disadvantaged and finding themselves in situations where they're going to go to jail. It's easier for people to place sole culpability on those individuals, be them kids or not, than to step back and say, damn, what is it that I could have done to prevent something like this from happening? Right? It's just that much easier for people to say that, nah, that person was a super predator. They were a monster. No, that was a kid who made a childish decision. Someone who couldn't go see an R-rated movie legally on their own, right? So they can't decide what type of movies they should see, but they're cognizant enough to make all of these grown decisions. No, it's just easier for people to sleep at night, right? When they say that. And you spoke to Governor Carey and Willie Boskett earlier, and I want to point out the fact that part of that was driven by the media. Governor Carey reading an article stating that Willie Boskett stated that he kills because he likes it. He enjoys it. Right. So I think that's why it's so important what me and Lawrence are doing and what the Marshall Project is doing by taking ownership of amplifying the voices of justice affected people, right? By really saying that you're not just going to be the subject of the media, like you're going to have a role and a part in this and drive this narrative. Because we've seen what the media has done over time and what the media continues to do. Now, I won't say all media platforms because you have a platform and it's obvious what you're doing. And it's important that we're in this age and that we drive things forward. It's so easy for people to scapegoat because it allows them to say, well, I'm not culpable in any way. There's nothing that I could have done, right? And in the instance that you referred to in St. Louis, it's completely obvious that this person had the intention of killing. Right, that's completely contradictory to what an officer of the law is supposed to be intending to do. This person did not present any danger when they began to pursue him. It was for a drug arrest, right? It wasn't for a violent crime. But you're so agitated and frustrated as you're pursuing this person that you're like, I'm going to kill this guy. And then you actually kill this person. And how do you get off from that, right? It's because society will view the officer and say, well, you know what? Under any circumstances, their job is hard. I'm going to trust that the officer is doing the right thing. And that's because the narrative has been put in place that the officer is always going to be right. Not that the police are all wrong, because it's a tough job and it's an important job, but it's important that we begin to take ownership of the narrative and inform ourselves and change this narrative. And that's why I'm so proud of what we're doing.
No.
And more so, let me add that it's not even that society accepts it, because society has been pushing back over it all summer with George Floyd. But it's the structures that are in place that allows officers to have qualified immunity and get off. And these officers know, whatever I do, I'm going to get off. Nothing really going to happen to me. You know what I mean? We're going to see what happened with Derek Chauvin. His trial is coming up. So, but, this is the mindset of a lot of these officers. And that's why we're in this position today.
No, definitely. Well, two things to that. One, I feel that us, we're obligated to do what we're doing, whatever platform it is. I do my own thing. I have my own lane. You guys have your own lane as well. They're both very important in driving, changing the narrative, so to speak, right? But I also feel that, and I know we've all three of us have dealt with that same mentality inside the penitentiary with these, with the officers inside. From the officers who literally walk around with black babies hanging from their forearm, right? And they walk around with short sleeves with no problem, right? I've seen it. We've all seen it. We all know about these stories. Some people don't understand that, and some people even question, "Oh, Fred, they write the comments. Does that really happen?" Man, people don't understand the racist mentality that it has, and I say that especially like in a lot of these police forces, it trickles down. Right? It trickles down. The same thing like a lot of racist ideologies for me is, if your daddy's a racist, if your mama's a racist, that kid is going to be a product the same way as we're talking about these other kids that are in the streets. These same people are going to be products of that. You understand? Even though they're not considered criminals. Does that make sense? Like they're going to be like the Derek Chauvins or whatever. Like that didn't just happen that day. Like his mind was already like that. Like this is how he was built, right? And we've seen stuff like that again. And as far as inside the penitentiary, like when anything happens, you guys already know when we go to the adjustment committee, we're guilty. It doesn't It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you have 50 witnesses. If that man says you did this, you are done, right? I mean, how many times have we seen that, right? How many times have we gone to the Just Committee knowing,
Every time.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
you
So
can't beat it.
Can't beat it. Even the New York Times wrote a story about the tier hearings and or the adjustment committee that you're talking
Really?
about. Yeah, it's a long study. They got pictures of Comstock in there. They went through all their data, Sing Sing data, and they show you how over 90-something% of people who go there, they get found guilty. You know, I mean, only in places like Sing Sing where it's a little bit more equity there, where or people will go to the adjustment committee, which is if you get an infraction for doing something wrong, you go to somebody who's supposed to be like a judge to give you a hearing to see whether you're guilty or not guilty. But in those situations, more times than not, people get found guilty, except in facilities like Sing Sing, where less people get found guilty, but still, the stats are high. And we'll post some of those in the comments as well. But also, you talk about Derek Chauvin. He has a record in the Marshall Project. We wrote a story about Chauvin's record previously. He had his knee on the necks and backs of many people back then. There was many complaints against him. But this he just happened to kill George Floyd, and then now it comes to light. But they could have stopped that years ago.
He happened to kill George Floyd, and it happened to be videoed.
Be on video. That's right. Good.
That's the
important.
That's the
because
only.
you can't ignore that. Yeah.
That's the only reason, guys, that anybody's on trial for that. Let's just get this straight right now. Let's just call it what it is. That's the only reason anybody's even being held accountable is because it was on video. I mean, we've seen the Rodney King thing, so videos aren't always, but nowadays it's a different era. It's a different thing, especially with them videos. Now, real quick to piggyback on what you said, John, about the Sing Sing thing, right? That sometimes people can beat it. Now, let me ask you, is that because of the captains and the officers there? Like they're a little bit more different than the ones that are further upstate? You understand what I'm saying? Because Sing Sing is kind of close to New York. So you may have some of the officers, I've never been to Sing Sing, right? But I'm asking, so I'm saying is like, you may have some of the officers who may be closer to New York, who may understand that city mentality and may have been around, say, different races, as opposed to upstate where, it's, 99, the county this correction officer came from, 99% are white, right? Do you think that has something to do with why people may beat some tickets in Sing Sing? I'm just posing that out there.
Absolutely, I believe so. Sing Sing Correction Facility has the largest amount of people of color who are correctional officers in the state. So they, like you said, they from the city, close to the city, they understand the plight. So, and they're not so quick to lie. I had a talk with someone in administration in the facility. I'm not going to name that person's name. That person doesn't work there. But I remember having a private conversation with this person, and this person mentioned that there was a fight in the yard between two individuals. One person was Jamaican, and the other person was Latino. They had a fight, and the Jamaican friends were there, and the Latino friends were there. So it looked like a whole group of people, but only two people were fighting. So in that instance, being upstate, when something happens like that, the officers come out there, they see 30 people standing around watching the fight. If you're closely to it, everybody going down for a riot. People getting from anywhere from 90 days to maybe a year or so in solitary confinement. And it could be 10, 20 years later, a person goes to the parole board, and at the parole board, they're using that ticket against them, and they could get 2 more years, won't get out. So those instances are very important. But if you get pulled up, you go. We already mentioned you go to a tier hearing, you usually get found guilty. But in this instance, they grabbed everyone up, and it was a sergeant who was white who was there, and a couple of officers. They grabbed everyone up. They sent about 30 people to the box. You're done. You're supposed to go to the box. It's over. Even though you didn't get your tier hearing, it's over. But this particular person who I was talking to had the ability to investigate before they even went through the hearing committee, and he let 8 of them out of the box, and he got backlash from his peers. Why you let them out the box? You're not supposed to do it. And he said, because I asked other officers who are going to tell me the truth. They said that them guys wasn't doing nothing. They was just standing there. But usually, even if you say that, you're just standing there. All right, so what? They go in the box anyway. That's how the practice was done. But they told him the truth and he let them out. And I said, so why did you do that? Why did you let them out the box? He said, because I'm the one that got to look at my reflection in the mirror at night. And I don't want to look at it with guilt. You know what I mean? So that's why I did that. So that's just an example of some of the officers that are there that would take a stand. Not to say that it happens the majority of the time, because it still is a lot of work to do, because a lot of nonsense goes on, but it does happen. Sometimes you get a fair shake.
I would say, to add to what you just said, John, I would say that in facilities like Sing Sing, where it's more diverse, it's the racial dynamic, how that plays is that there's this one dynamic of the officer, the same thing we see with police officers, is supposed to be the authority figure. They've been trained and conditioned in a way where as though they can never be wrong. They could never show an admission of being wrong, because that's like a complete submission in their eyes. They've been trained this way. Like, you always have to maintain this posture of authority. In upstate facilities, that's compounded with racism, right? Like, it's compounded with racism. So it's like, I hate you, and I know everything about my life has told me I'm not supposed to give in to you in any way. And I think that in facilities like Sing Sing, you don't have that added component of race. You still have that component of, well, I'm never supposed to admit that I'm wrong. I'm never supposed to admit that you're right and I'm wrong, right? And I'm never supposed to accept correction or criticism from you in any way. I don't care what it is. You know, they tell you if you're given a direct order, you're supposed to follow it regardless of what it is. Yeah. Like, that's insane. That's completely irrational. And any human being who's functional can tell you that, but they won't admit to that.
Right.
They'll just say, well, you just need to follow the order. Well, the officer gave you an order. I can't, he wrote you a ticket. You should have done it and then filed the grievance after. What? It didn't make sense.
You know what?
He told me to do
half the time I would just go in and plead guilty with an explanation. You know what I'm saying? Because you're getting found guilty anyway, and you might as well just try to at least say your side. You know what I mean?
And what that does is allow them to be a bit more rational.
Right.
Say, well, hey, all right, you submitted to the guilt. Now, tell me what really happened. Like, how did this really? Okay, I get it. I'll give you a slap on the wrist.
You know what I did notice too, guys, and I know you guys will understand what I'm saying, is that first of all, especially upstate, first when I say 5, 6, 7 hours away, where the corrections officers are 98% white, right? They're raised in that environment, okay? They're taught certain things about other races, okay? Then they go through the academy where they're drilled, okay? And then they come in, and when they come in, they see that the race dynamics, whatever the percentage is, and 10% white, but everything else is what they've been taught, what they've been said, the animals, the super predators. This is what they've been taught. You understand? So it coincides. So when they come in and they see half the yard is 80%, 70% black, you know what I'm saying? And Latinos, it justifies their actions. It justifies their mentality. It justifies what their daddy taught them and their grandfather taught them about the animals and the super predators. You understand? And I also noticed you guys can talk about this, but especially I noticed it's a lot of the newer correction officers, okay? The newer corrections officers, because they're not savvy to what's really happening. A lot of times when you have a correction officer who's been down 20 years or something, those are the ones that are a little bit more like lenient. You understand? Am I making sense?
Yeah, those are the ones that, feel like they did it already. There was that young officer who wanted to make their bones, wanted to be a knucklehead, heard all the stories in the bars. Yeah, I cracked this inmate, lack of a better term, his head open, and I want to do this and I want to do that. It was fun. It was fun, Jim. They did all that before, so they like, I ain't gonna be so hard on doing it. But the young ones didn't do that before, so they get their jollies off doing it. Just like you talk about, we talk about juveniles who brain aren't fully developed yet, and they make rash, impulsive decisions, and it equals into crime. But they have officers whose brains haven't fully developed yet. They're still young. They make rash decisions, but yet they're protected. They're protected by the system, and they're protected by those old timers who necessarily wouldn't do that, but they're not going to step in and say, you were wrong, so we're going to throw that ticket out. No, they're going to say, maybe you shouldn't have did that, but we're going to support you all the way. And that guy's going to the box forever.
Right. No, it's true, man. It's just, I see it all the time, but I just think that it just has to do with the mentality of the person, right? And like you said, the environment. It's going to be hard, to be honest with you. It's hard to change that environment. Like, we're putting it out there for the public to see so that they understand what really happens. But it's like, how can we change? How can we, what would you guys' suggestions would be like? How can we change that? Does it start in the academy? Do we, is it the academy where this needs to start and certain things need to be implemented?
For me, I always think about the human dynamic. I think one of the things you see with some of those officers, because you have officers who have been there for 30 years and they're still as hateful, spiteful, and others.
Agreed.
I think with some of those officers, what you see is that human dynamic settle in, right? They get to meet that person and they recognize that, well, this isn't a super predator. This isn't the monster like I was trained he would be. This is a human being. And sometimes they may see a bad thing happen to that person or a good thing, but I think that sits in a person, because at our core, I think we're all human, I don't think anybody is evil. I mean, we may do some very bad things, but I think it's about more creating a human experience. In upstate facilities, what you see is people who've been in this one community for a long period of time, have these imports coming, and people are just seen as like invaders in their territory. So they go into a facility and they're outnumbered, as you said, right? So they're on guard always. People are depicted in the media and through their training as being these monsters, these super aggressive monsters. And some people have done some pretty horrendous things.
Yeah.
What people are never told is that these are human beings you're interacting with, right? I think once you create that alterity, that sense of otherness, like, there's no way we can interact as human beings. So I think that to really change the system of how we interact with law enforcement, period, we have to begin to see each other both as human. I think that's the key to it. And without that component, there will be no change, because that's always going to be the other person, right? So having those different color uniforms are meant to be reminders that I'm on this side and they're on that side. Just like a sports team. I'm in these colors, they're in those colors. They're the different one. So as long as you're the different one, I can treat you different, because we're human on this side. You're something different over there. So yeah. I think as long as that human dynamic is not acknowledged, right? As long as we're seeing people for whatever the decision was that they made and not for the human that they are and the human potential that they have to be and do. Like, all of us were convicted at early on in our lives at young ages. And some people might have said, it's over for him. They're monsters. They'll just be whatever. How could you say that? Because you didn't look at the human potential in us, right? To grow and develop and become more than what you labeled us. So I think that it's about finding a way to connect people as human beings. And then you interact differently when this person is another human. They're not just inmates such and such, who did such and such. No, this is Mr. Johnson. This is Mr. Bartley. This is Mr. Washington. This is another human being who has a family that he's trying to get home to. So let me help him prepare to get to that place. Not let me make his life as miserable as possible for whatever he did that can never be changed.
The dehumanization though starts like right from jail, like, or even when you go upstate to downstate, right? When you're stripped, right? When you're made to get naked, right? When they lice you, right? When they make you bend over, and I always talk about this, when they make you bend over and spread your butt cheeks so the next man can look up there, they make you lift your nuts. These is all deep, these is all designed, for that. Also, we're branded like animals. Think about it. We are literally branded like how they do cows on the farm with a number. And that's what you're known as forever. They don't care like what your name is. What's your number? What's your number? What's your ID number? That's it, because you're branded like that. So you're right. Inmates especially, they're not looked at as regular people, like you said, because they did crime, you're on the other side, and that's just the way it goes, right? You know, I even spoke about like the reverse racism thing, like because some people like Fred, well, you was, you know, you was a certain color, they still looked at me the same because I was behind that bars. You understand what I mean? The way I walk, the way I talk, who I associated with. I was, you know, they didn't like that. Fred had dreads at one time. Like they just, you understand what I mean? Automatically, automatically, I'm looked at as something different. You know what I mean? And you know, and sometimes I try to get that point across, especially to these kids, man, that you know, when you're out here and you're doing these things, yes, you know, we understand why they're doing them, but you have to think about your actions. You have to think about what you're doing, because these are the type of things that you're gonna have to deal with. You know, it doesn't matter what gang you in, what organization you in. The ones who run the joint, they wear them blue, man. They wear the blue, and that's just how it goes. You know what I mean? Like, you know, we've seen it all the time. Again, you can't beat a ticket. Anything the officer says, that's just the way it goes. I'm glad you had those kind of experiences in Sing Sing. You know, I never got there, but you know, I've never beat a ticket in my life, right? You know what I'm saying? I actually beat one on appeal. You know what I'm saying? Like later on, you know, I beat something because the kid said I didn't do it, or he said I wasn't sure. He wasn't sure if I did it, and they still convicted me. But 90 days later, I got that overturned on appeal. But I had to do all this process. I was still locked up for 90 days. You know what I mean? So, you know, that was the only time I ever beat it. And I didn't, you know, technically I had to beat that through Albany, through Selsky at the time. At the time, it was Donald Selsky. Remember Donald Selsky, Mr. Bartley?
Yeah, I remember that. But
You,
you know, going back to what you said earlier, man,
mm-hmm.
about how to change.
Yep.
There's some people that say that the system needs to be reformed.
Mm-hmm.
There's other people that tell you that you can't reform the system. All the people empowering the system need to be removed and replaced with other people who
That's
think
what I was
different.
trying to get at, because I don't see how. That's why I was asking. Go ahead.
Exactly. So whatever way, you know, they feel like they need to go about it. What Donald and I and the other folks at the Marshall Project are doing, we're doing deep dives into these different stories and these processes, and providing people with information in order to make those decisions and how the system should be going forward. You know, we provide them with everything they need to know in order to make it happen. We don't actually do it because we're not advocates, but we have a role in this, and our role is education and the knowledge necessary. And you are right. Another point you mentioned, that you know, the dehumanization, when you talk about when you get incarcerated, it starts when they strip you naked, they spray you with the lice, with the spray so you won't have lice, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the way to dehumanize you. But it also in when we talk about super predator, they dehumanize us with language. We're calling us animal terms, super predator. And we could go back further than that. It's systemic, because in many different facets of a system, there's this mechanism put in place for people to fail. Then when you even go inside the system, they call people inmates. Inmates is not it's not a people first way of referring to someone as an inmate, a convict. A person is a Mr. Johnson or Mr. Bartley or Mr. Washington. We are people. So that's why many people prefer to be called incarcerated people, or person in prison, or person incarcerated. So you don't take away that humanity away from a person, because subconsciously that plays a part in the way people are viewed, and in turn the way people are treated.
No, definitely. You get what you're doing is you're giving people the tools, right? You can't force them to change anything, but you give them subjective, you know, you give them some ideas that maybe this is how we can change the system, right? Because the reality is that's kind of why I asked that question before, because you know, it's hard, it's going to be hard to change that mentality unless, like you said, everyone is removed and new people with some new understandings and some new philosophies are put in place. You know what I mean? Because again, when you come from a certain environment, especially upstate New York, it's hard to change those guys' mentalities when they leave the facilities and they're going to Klan meetings, or they're, you know what I'm saying, or they're, you know, they're all hanging in the bars talking about the stuff that they've done to people. Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of you. I just think that there's so much, like we get into the whole industrialized aspect of it. There's so much money invested and involved in this, right? And New York City, New York State in particular, right? So we're in New York, so we'll talk about New York as a prime example. It's a blue state by virtue of the city only, right? Upstate is all red, right? And we can't see that movement to push to have a complete overhaul of the system because there's too much money involved, right? So at the end of the day, all of those bodies that we see in green uniforms and jumpsuits, all equal dollars for communities and families they've been living and thriving for generations off of this. Like it's whole ecosystems built around this, and they're not trying to let that go for the sake of progress. You know, I think one of the reasons that they maintain that whole hard air being hard and tough on crime is because it ensures some type of job security for them, right? Like some of them, it's like, yeah, I want you to, yeah, go ahead. I want you to get, yeah, I want you to get that tier here and that ticket. Yeah, I don't know where those $5 were going that I had to pay for all them tickets. I don't know. I still don't know where was this money going. I have no idea. Like I have no idea what where that money was going. But it's a business for them.
It's a whole system because the recidivism rate is very high, right? They're building a lot of more prisons, and they'd rather put money in the prison system than to actually educate from the beginning to try to help these kids and help these youth. That's been a problem for a long time, right?
Yeah.
They have no problem giving money to the prison system and the corrections, no problem at all. But if you're talking about 40 kids in one class, I mean, how much learning can really get done, right? So like you said, it's the whole, it's like we could be here all day talking about this type of stuff. Like it starts there. It starts with the with the kids. It starts because they're building new jails now today. They're not building it for me because I'm not going back, right? But they're building you feel me? They're building them for our kids, which I'm not letting happen either. You understand what I mean? So it all starts with that because again, the recidivism rate, because I tell people all the time, we used to make 10 cents an hour, 8 cents an hour, right? For jobs that, and then then you come out here and then, a dude will be like, I'm not working for $15 an hour. I just look at him like silly, right? You're like, that don't even make sense to me, right? Because we've worked for 8 cents an hour. So we understand the grind and what it takes, right? But you know what I like about you guys, and especially from the beginning of this interview, right? Especially what you said, Mr. Washington, was that you studied and you got your degree and you did all of this. We know you did the same thing, Ja. Is that in the prison, here's my opinion on it. Again, I'm just saying this is my opinion. I don't think that there's rehabilitation unless you yourself decide that you want to change, because they're not going to force you to rehabilitate. They don't give a shit. They don't care. They don't care what if you go to program or not. They don't care. And the trades that they have are like lawnmowers from 1970, electrician work that doesn't even work out here. Like they don't care. They don't put their money, whatever money that they're putting to corrections, it ain't towards those kind of programs, right? But what you guys did, and what I like is you guys decided yourself that you wanted to rehabilitate and you wanted to change your life, because no one's gonna change your life unless you decide that you want to do it, right? Agreed?
Agreed.
Totally. And I think that also speaks to having hope, right? And having sentences, though Lawrence and I both were sentenced to life, John and I both were sentenced to life, we still had the possibility. And I think that, like in stories like creating the Superpredator story, this whole narrative was used to enhance so many sentences and like to approach young people in ways that place them in situations where it's hopeless for them to come out of it. You spoke about Willie Bosket, and who knows what Willie Bosket could have been today, after decades in prison. Like I think all lives are redeemable, right? And if the Department of Corrections can't correct people, then it shouldn't be a Department of Corrections, right? So if y'all can't do your job, then y'all don't need to have a job. And I think that terms like Superpredator was used to put some young people in place and in places where they have no hope. So they don't even have They don't even have a desire to change in some instances, right? It's no motivation. It's just like, my life is over. I've been here since 15, 14, 17, 30 years with another 30 years to go, right? My whole life has been snuffed out because I'm a super predator. I was a super predator. I was a monster. You know, I was a 17-year-old kid who might have been in over my head or might have just been wild and reckless, which kids do, you know, so.
No, all of us.
And they,
Gotcha.
yeah, and I was saying, and once a person gets up north, they're fed negativity. Like some people, I remember I know this guy that was in a box and you know, they fed him, they put him on a special diet where they fed him cabbage and water for months.
Loaf.
And he wrote his family like, yo, that's even before the loaves came out. He wrote his family like, yo, come on a visit to feed me, because we come on a visit once a week. A family member could buy something from the vending machine and feed a person. But his sister told him, you lying, man. They ain't feeding you that. They ain't torturing people like that. They don't do that no more. What are you talking about? And you know, it hurt him, you know, and she was basically saying, you always in trouble. You shouldn't be in solitary confinement in the first place. So, and I started to think, I remember when you know, I was in a facility and they had told us that they had say that you have to limit your property from, it was phasing, you had unlimited amounts, then it went down to 10 bags of property, then 6, then 4. At the point where we was down to 8 bags, so they was phasing everything down, just imagine painting a picture like you have everything in your house or your apartment, everything that's your belongings. And at any given moment, you can move from one house to another, and someone is telling you that, you know, a third of your stuff has to go in the garbage. You can't take it with you. But you know, I was the person that read directive and policy, and I would challenge something that was wrong. So I knew I was moving from one cell to another cell. So I wrote a grievance, say, yo, listen, they're telling people they can only have 6 bags, where the directive said you can only have 8 bags. And that's what you're supposed to do. You have a complaint, you're supposed to write a grievance, you're supposed to send it in. And the person who's supposed to be hearing the grievance came to see me in my cell and said, yo, listen, I want you to sign off. I want you to say that this grievance is nonsense and you ain't gonna do it. That we right and you wrong. I said, nah, I'm not doing that. He said, yes, you are gonna do that. I said, no, I'm not doing that. And so he punched me in my face. He punched me in my face, and then 10 other officers or more jumped me. I had me on handcuffs, and I got the scar right here. One of the scars right here still. They jumped me and sent me to solitary confinement for assaulting an officer. And the ticket he wrote, I'm having a nice day. Then Mr. Bartley just came up to me and punched me in my face. I was so devastated, and the hearing officer here, okay, we're gonna slay you for that. So when I get to the box, they take my property, everything, all my stuff, put it in bags, they packed it themselves, and they have me inside of a cage with my underwear on, this small cage, and they have 2 officers going through my property, throwing things away and keeping stuff. So they got me down to, forget 6 bags, but 4 bags. They threw away most of my stuff. And one officer, I'll never forget, he was about 22, 23 years old. He came across a photograph of my son, and he was 8 months at the time. And for those who don't know it, New York State is one of 4 states where you can have family reunion visits, where you can spend time with your family for 48 hours without any guards watching you. And I was able to have children that way. You in order to qualify for this, you have to have a good record. You have to not be in a lot of trouble at the moment, and you can maintain it. So this officer took this photo of my kids and brought it to me and was like, is this your son? I was proud. I was like, yeah, that's my son. You know, I seen a picture of him and made me smile, even though it was a bad situation. And I thought he was gonna give me a pat. I'm like, yo, that's cool. He was like, yeah, that's great. Yo, keep popping him out, man, because I'm gonna still be working here when he comes to prison. This is job security. So you know how I felt? And he looked me in my eyes like, I'm you behind these bars. You can't do nothing to me. And I know I could have just snapped him in half, this little thing. I could have snapped him in half. I know I could have, but I ain't even giving him a satisfaction to be angry and enraged and say, all right, okay, cool. You know what I mean? But that's the stuff people have to go through. And when a person in prison, it's very difficult to change when you're dealing with that level of trauma every day. And so I just wanted to highlight that for some folks.
No, please, I have one of those stories. I was in the box and me and the officers didn't get along because I didn't want the double bunk. You guys know how the double bunks is. And when I seen the guy come out and they're like, all right, you go to the rec pen, you know, to close the door in the back and the SHU, the double bunk joints. And I asked the dude, yo, you smoke? I tell the story all the time. Yo, you smoke? And the kid was like, yeah. And I was like, nah, this is when I met Darius. I was like, nah, so he can't come in my cell. He smokes. At the time you could smoke. And I was like, nah. So they ended up beating me up. So they didn't like me in that box. So another time, then they, you know, like this was like 2 months later, these same police, right? They searched my cell. Oh, matter of fact, they would search my cell, but I came off the visit and they had searched my cell. Like dudes was coming on the visit, like, yo, they in your cell. And I'm like, damn. And I was on a visit on the box. When I went in the box, I seen my pictures, bro. You can only get a certain amount, but they had ripped up my pictures and they threw them in the toilet bowl. You know what I'm talking about? And I'm like, you know, cuffed up and everything. And I was cuffed and the door was closed when I seen it. And I'm not gonna say a lie. I didn't know, like it was just a reaction. I like spit. And that was the worst decision ever because they came and beat the fuck out of me, put me on loaf and all that. But it was just like certain abuse, and they just abuse their power, and there's nothing you can do about it, man. And you feel helpless, and you feel, lost, and you feel desperate, and you feel, isolated. And this is what they want, and they want to break you. You know what I mean? They want to break your spirit. They just want to break you, period. Not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. And there was no need for them to take my, like during the search, I wasn't bothering anybody. Why you putting them in the toilet bowl? Like, who does that, right? But again, they do it, and they do it with a smile. You know what I mean? So it's just, this is why also everyone knows on the Tales family, this is why I do my videos. So these kids understand that this is the type of stuff that goes on. Again, I don't care what organization you with. I don't care what gang you down with. I don't care none of that. You're going to feel some type of oppression one way or another. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. And it's important that we name it what it is. It's torture. It's psychological torture.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's what they try to inflict on you on so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It could just be a light constantly flashing on you. Like, imagine always, you can't sleep at night, you got a light on you constantly. Like, there's so many different tricks of the trades that they try. And I really applaud you for doing this for the youth, because it's not about being tough. It's not about being hard. Like, anybody could be beaten. Anybody could be defeated. It's just being subjected to torture on many different levels for years. Like, you spoke about how the dehumanization process starts when you come into the facilities, right? But it's like every time you come off a visit, every time you get that semblance of being human again and you're interacting with your family, you got to go through that mortifying process all over again, right? Yeah. You got to go through it. You got to get naked. You got to strip, not even counting what they subject your family to coming in, if they even allow them to come in, right? So it's abuse and it's torture that you're subjected to for years.
Yet we are the super predators.
Yeah, we are, right. Exactly. Let me tell you, on the first time when I did that with the guy and I told me he can't come on my cell, I knew they was coming. They beat me up. They did all that. And then they beat me up so bad that when my family did come on a visit, it was only visits on Saturday nights. It was like 5 to 9 or something like that. It was only Saturday nights. That's it. That was the only time. They didn't even let my family see me. They said there was some type of security breach and they made my family go home. They wasn't letting my mail out. I had to send my mail to somewhere else and let them send it out to my family, let them know like what was going on. This is the desperation. Like, you have nobody to, you understand? Like, you have nobody that's going to help you because they don't know, right? You know what I mean? You couldn't make no phone calls. Again, you couldn't, they sent my people away. They sent my moms away because they didn't want her and them to see what they had did to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. And this is the type of things that, we need to get across to the public, man, that these people just get away with, they literally get away with murder. I know another dude, they had turned my water off for a couple of days, but this other dude, I mean, he was a problem in the box. That's the, but, they turned his water off for like a week. And dude, actually, I speak about this, dude actually like had to like drink his own urine to try. And, a lot of people don't understand that, but when you're in survival mode and when you're in survival mode, whatever that is. Now, that's like breaking you down to that's like really trying to break you and really trying to like make you go mentally insane, right? That's also because they want, like, if that guy comes back out into to the real world, they know 90% of the time a guy like that did them broke and he's coming right back. Like you said, the job security. So it's a vicious cycle that's set up in a certain way that people don't even understand. You know, you understand what I mean? Because they know that guy that they made drink his own piss and was trying to burn his L and do all that. You think he's going to come out to society and you know what I mean? And how productive is he going to be? Right? So this is their mentality, and it's just, I hate it, and I hate the super predator terms. And you know, again, I love the video you guys did. That thing was amazing, and you know, I'm telling everybody right now in this link, they're gonna click down in this link and they're gonna go watch this, because this piece is really good. You know, Ja's, you know, you guys know Ja already. You guys love Ja, so go support the movement, people. We're on here doing some positivity. You guys already know, man. To my Tails family, make sure everyone watching this video, everyone watching this live, because I'm gonna put this up as a live. Everyone watching this, you guys go click that video. I'm going to be putting the links in the chat, putting the links in the description. I want everybody to go check this video out so you guys can see for yourself what actually happens in the prison system. And some people may feel that it doesn't affect you, but it may affect one of your family members. It may affect your brother. It may affect your uncle. It may affect your cousin. So I need everyone to go and watch this video, man, because it is amazing, man. You guys, I appreciate you guys coming by, man. I appreciate, as always, y'all, you know, I love you, man. You already know, man. That's my boy right there, man. And Donald, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege, man. Maybe I'd like to have you come on, maybe just by yourself one day, and you tell your story. And then you guys tell your story, you know, you tell your story for the people, man. But it's been amazing. And make sure you guys go watch this video, Super Predators, on the Marshall Project. I'm going to put the link up. And you guys know the motto, people. Experience is the greatest teacher. But somebody else's experience could be just as valuable if you pay attention and listen. On that note, people, Fat White, signing out.
Salute.